So if you've interacted with a lot of the MCAT Saviors teaching material, you might notice that a lot of times we make a distinction between top-down versus bottom-up teaching material. So what's the big deal? Basically, the reason why this is an issue is because the vast majority of material that is meant to teach cars that is available from third-party companies is built in a top-down manner. So what does top-down look like? In a nutshell, a top-down based learning methodology is one that kind of starts at the end point and assumes that you will pick up the rules and mechanics of the game as you keep going. So for example, in sections 1, 3, and 4, Chem, Phys, Bio, and Psych, Soc, top-down approaches work really well because they're content-based. If you have the content, doing more practice volume of passages and sections works really good because you learn how to apply that content to the exam. Now, imagine if we did that same thing in cars though, because cars is an application of skill, not content. This is really important because in a lot of ways, cars is more like playing a sport than the other sections, because in each different cars section you're going to get, all the passages are going to be super different. The only thing you could bring to the table is the skills that you've developed. But with the top-down approach, those skills don't have enough time to grow, because if you're just doing a high volume of practice passages with light review, that's not sufficient, and then continuing to do that over time, you're going to learn the skills slowly or maybe not at all. Let's contrast this with a bottom-up approach. In this approach, you would start from the basics. For example, what are the passage elements that are most important? We like to call them testable concepts here at MCAT Savior that I need to know, and how can I use them when answering questions? For example, timing strategy, how to answer questions. All of these things are small things that you build piece by piece by piece, starting from a level of no understanding. That's essentially what makes it bottom up, or built from the bottom, from the fundamentals. How do we read passages? How do we answer questions? How do we use timing strategy? And how do we properly review to improve our skills? Those are basically the first 4 modules of the MCAT Savior Cars course in a nutshell. But the reason why we built it that way is because since you're learning skills, you want to make sure you learn them very proficiently in the beginning. So why does this matter? Imagine you were told to play a sport that you had never heard of. And on the first day you showed up and you were just going through the motions. Eventually you figure out a little bit about how the sport works. And if you play enough games, you'll get some idea of the rules and what you should and shouldn't do. That's what happens with a top-down approach and a high volume of practice passages without sufficient baseline skills work or proper review. You end up just going through the motions. The issue is that when you get to game day or the actual exam, it's going to look so much different than it does from even AMC's own full-length tests or any third-party full-length exams. And in that situation, not knowing the fundamental components of what makes cars cars then backfires, because you're now in a very, very, very different environment where you're asked to apply the skills that you have in a huge amount of different ways that you weren't historically made to do. And that's why students often have such a big difference between their practice scores and their performance on test day. It's because while they were good at using a top-down approach and they made some progress there, they never worked on the fundamental skills that would actually give them a higher consistency to their score. And unfortunately, the reason why the top-down approach is still popular is because a lot of individuals that are naturally intelligent and score high in cars often just do a high volume of cars practice. But here's the thing, that can be a little bit misleading because cars is essentially reading comprehension, and individuals can just have a very high innate talent for reading comprehension. There are many cases of individuals who are high school level, they take SAT and they're given cars passages and they do phenomenally well. It's just because they, as an individual, have a very high propensity for reading-based assessments. That doesn't necessarily mean the same thing would work for the average student. And this is a big point of contention among the MCAT community, because a lot of the individuals who do score in the 90th percentile and above, especially in cars, are those that are very naturally intelligent in reading mechanics or reading comprehension in general. So to compete with them, especially as an average student, we have to use a different style of studying. And for us here at MCAT Savior, that was basically creating an entire course that's built up from the bottom so that any student can go through and learn exactly how AMC builds passages, how they build questions, and how to get around them to score as high as possible. So if you're interested in this type of learning theory, the full video regarding what top-down and bottom-up learning is available as part of Module 0 in our free strategy set. Definitely keep these distinctions between CARs and the other sections in mind as you go through your study program, because it's going to pay off in the long run. So we hope this helped. All right, that was a complicated lesson. If you still need help, check out our full-length blog post that we linked in the video description, explore more of our YouTube channel, or just head on over to mcatsavior.com where you can get all of our strategy courses for free.